All righty, Locked On Colts every day as we are back with Mock Draft Monday. Just to recap real quick, in round one, I traded back to pick 20, took Alabama linebacker Jahad Campbell to solve the hole next to Zaire Franklin, and then I took cornerback as Azareye'h Thomas, cornerback for Florida State. I have been practicing that name all week. I will get it by draft time. Azareye'h Thomas. From Florida State to just lock up that cornerback room. And then Jake in his mock draft Monday took Georgia safety Malachi Starks in round one. He stuck at pick 14, and then he took LSU tight end Mason Taylor in round two. So now we're going into round three. Jake has one pick. I have two picks because I like to cheat. I'm just so good at this cheating thing when it comes to the mock draft Mondays here. So we'll let Jake go first because he's only got one pick. Which route did you go here in round three, Jake? Because look, you took the two biggest needs to start off. You went tight end and safety. There's a lot of different directions you could go in round three.
Yeah, it was really hard not to get a defensive lineman to this point, or really an offensive lineman. This draft's pretty rich near the top in the first couple days at both positions. But there's just someone who really, I think, fits the Colts like a glove, no matter if it was Bradley or Anarumo. That's Oregon linebacker Jeffrey Bassa. When I watch this guy, so when I'm watching linebackers right now for the Colts specifically, I'm doing it with Zaire Franklin in mind. He is going to be the Mike linebacker. A lot of people don't want that. A lot of people are on board with it. It's going to happen. Unless for some reason he's a part of a trade, Zaire is going to be your Mike in 2025. So I want someone who complements him very well. I already like Jalen Carlies, but competition is the key here. And Bassa is someone who I watched and I was like, oh God, he covers up what Franklin lacks so well. And he's got the same leadership qualities that Franklin does as well. So in terms of mentality and just like what they want to accomplish on the field, I think those guys would be great partners in crime. Both very vocal leaders, but Bassa has so much range. He moves so well in space. He's got really good coverage instincts because he is a former safety as well. So you kind of got that in your back pocket. Between him and Carlisle, you're really going to hit big on one of the two, I feel. He's not necessarily someone I would want to be the Mike because I think he's already got a decent frame, but he was a safety at one point for a reason. So his play strength isn't like awesome, but if you park him at will in a 4-3 defense like this or in your nickel packages, whatever, the guy's going to go out there and make plays. Very rangy, fast, great instincts. What strength and power he does have, he uses it. I just wouldn't love seeing him get washed up in the trenches all the time at Mike linebacker. I don't want him gummed up in the works a bit, but you get that guy out there in space and he is a big time playmaker.
Yeah, now I have to break it to you though, Jake. He only had 31-inch arms at the Senior Bowl.
I don't care. I love my T-Rex King.
Chris Ballard's gonna
listen to me right now. This is like year 9 of Ballard. Is this year 9 going into it with Ballard?
Yeah.
Homie, something ain't working.
Linebacker's fine though. Linebackers have been fine.
Linebackers have been great. That's very true. But what you and I say, we're not going to be wrong on this one. There have been some swings and misses by the Colts front office on this one. So
yeah,
I like what we like as well.
Yeah, no, I like Bassa though. I think he could be a good sub linebacker in year one, and then you can have him grow to maybe a bigger role after that. And look, this is going to be a scheme that asks a lot out of the linebackers with their eyes and their coverage instincts. And outside of maybe Carlisle, I don't know if we have a guy on the team that can really do that in the system. So a guy like Bassa can come in and be that former safety that can be like a sub player in the box that you bring in on third downs and can be an efficient player for you. So yeah, I love the fit there. I think round 3 is a perfect spot for him, especially those T-Rex arms. You can't go any higher with those T-Rex arms. But I do love Jeffrey Bassa and a Senior Bowl guy though. So what he lacks in arm length, he makes up for it in Senior Bowl. That's the Chris Ballard specialty right there. So Jeffrey Bassa in round 3 to round out your mock draft Monday, Jake. Now with my 2 picks, we're going to go with some fan favorites here. First off, we're going with tight end Harold Fannin from Bowling Green. I know Colts fans love this guy. Not as much as Tyler Warren, but Colts fans do like him a good bit. And I understand why people love him. Almost 1,600 yards receiving last year, 10 touchdowns.
God.
Also was a pretty good run blocker in college too, at a 75.2 run block grade according to Pro Football Focus. And it's kind of crazy to think of a player like this going in round 3, but when we talk about round 3, we talk about the flawed, talented players. And with Fannin, you have this guy who's so productive, who's also a willing blocker and a good blocker. So it's like, why is he falling this far? Well, the physique is a little bit smaller for a tight end. We're talking like 230s, and I think Jake even said something before we recorded that he heard somewhere that he was in the 220s last year in
When he
college,
played,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, 220s
Yeah.
last season in college. That's just not going to cut it in the NFL. So he's got to up the size a good bit. And also, I think even for his size, he is kind of a wonky mover on film. It worked at Bowling Green. Don't get me wrong. I love it. It worked at Bowling Green. Will it work in the NFL in terms of separating? We'll see. I think he's a little bit stiff. He's explosive, but I do think he's a little bit stiff as a route runner. So there are some flaws when it comes to Harold Fannin, but it's hard to knock the production from what he was doing in college. And also, I just love how willing he is as a blocker. Like, this isn't a Kylan Granson thing where he's small and a bad blocker. This is a thing where, like, yeah, he's kind of small, but he's a pretty darn good blocker. And it even translated well into the Senior Bowl game in practice where he was driving guys off the line. He looked like the best blocking tight end in that event. So I'm willing to take a shot on a guy like Fannin in round 3. If he's there for the Colts' 3rd round pick, and in this trade back scenario, I got an extra pick to take an extra shot in round 3. I'm taking that all day with Fannin, and we'll see what we can do with that. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But that production profile, the athleticism in terms of like the explosiveness and the run block willingness, I'm taking that all day in round 3. So Harold Fannin is one of my picks in round 3. And then we got to shout out my boy, Felipe Costa down in Brazil. He is a Locked On Everyday listener. This is his guy I'm taking here in round 3. Andrew Mukuba, safety from Texas. Now, the reason why he's falling to round 3, why Mukuba's falling to round 3, is he is a bit small. I think he was listed last year at like 6 foot, like 190. I think that's a very fake listing according to colleges. I think it might be sub 6 foot and like sub 190. And that's a bit small for a safety. But when you watch the film, you see a guy with 5 interceptions last year, 6 pass breakups. He is just coming downhill. He is just a rocket. You know, he plays 100 miles per hour, an absolute playmaker, doesn't shy up on any hits. And I know it's a little concerning for a small safety, but you know, I'm not going to say like it's like Bob Sanders, like, but that's kind of what Bob Sanders was like in terms of like smaller safety, but like flying downhill and making those big plays. And I think the Colts just need a playmaker at safety. You know, Nick Cross, I think, showed some good things as a tackler, showed some good things in the box last year. And then the glimpses we got of Julian Blackmon over the last couple years has been pretty good, but they need a true playmaker next to Nick Cross back there. And Mukuba, for being a smaller guy and a guy who really only broke out this past season after he transferred to Texas, I see a playmaker. I see that playmaking ability. So yeah, he might be a little bit small, but Chris Ballard has shown the tendency in the past to draft a little bit smaller at safety. I mean, Julian Blackmon was not the biggest safety by any means in his draft year. So I think a guy like Mukuba, if he's there in round 3, you look at the production in college, you look at just the way he plays the game, and I'm a big fan of that fit. Just give me a playmaker who can make plays on the ball and create turnovers. Give me another guy like that on this defense, and let's roll from there.
Yeah, starting with Fannin, I like that one. Obviously, kind of polarizing. You know, incredibly productive, and I'm surprised you didn't point out the fact that he's only like 20 years old. So you got a ton of room to grow for this kid.
I draft the young guys. I like him at like 20, 21 when it comes to draft prospects. I had to put when it comes to draft prospects because that was going to be a weird clip. But
there you go.
Yeah, draft prospects there. Yeah. Azaria Thomas and Harold Fannin and Jahad Campbell. Those are all guys who are like 20 years old. Like,
yeah, a lot of room here.
And they don't have to start from day one. Just get them in, develop them, and go from there. Look, Jalen Jones was like 20 when the Colts drafted him. Look how good he's been.
Richardson as well. That worked out a certain way. So Fannin, obviously super productive. I think as long as he can get separation, that will translate to the NFL in some way. I do like his tenacity, and he has the right mentality as a blocker. So like as a Kylan Granson type of blocker where you get him out on the move, kind of H-back type stuff, that
Yeah,
could work. But
right.
again, not a guy that you're going to park on the line. I mean, putting someone from Western Kentucky on a poster is not going to, you're not going to put CJ Mosley on a poster in that same way.
Right.
So, but I
Right.
like that he's a willing blocker. Like he'll have some utility in that direction. But you're right. Like his frame is exactly why he might find himself later on day 2. With Mukuba, cannot think of the name for the life of me, but you probably will remember it. The Washington drafted a guy late, a handful of years, maybe like 2012. Really undersized safety who was like a bullet, just a violent bullet like that. Cannot remember his name, but
Kyshawn
Mukuba.
Jarrett from
No,
Virginia Tech. He had that bad neck injury.
Texas A&M, I think.
Washington took a guy from Texas A&M in
Yeah,
2012. Oh
he's
gosh, you're making me go back to high school here.
a very undersized safety. He I think he at least lasted his first contract in the NFL, but
Okay, we'll have to
a
look it up
violent
after the
undersized
recording here.
safety.
Okay, we'll have
Yeah.
to look it up because I keep thinking Kyshawn Jarrett, who looked like a stud for Washington, and then he
Mm-hmm.
busted his neck in year 1. But yeah, those undersized safeties that fly around, man, maybe they don't last super long, but like, just get a playmaker in here.
They're
Julian
there for
Blackman
a
was kind of like this too for a little bit. Remember? I mean,
yeah.
Julian Blackman
Well,
was like that
he's
for the
been banged
Colts.
up. No, those
Yeah,
guys are here for a good time, not a long time.
yeah,
They can maybe get you something in their first contract. Good special teams player nonetheless, I'm sure.
yeah, yeah. But I just think the Colts need playmakers on defense
Yeah.
in this draft, and that's kind of what we were going for here. Like Bassa, like who you took Bassa and Malachi Starks. Maybe not the perfect Chris Ballard fits, but playmakers. Jahad
Mm-hmm.
Campbell and Mukuba, like those are playmakers on defense. Last year, 8 sacks for Campbell, 5 interceptions for Mukuba. Like, bring me the difference makers. Bring me guys
Mm-hmm.
who aren't just gonna get. This is gonna sound like a shot here on a player, but it's really not because the player that it sounds like a shot at had a ton of turnovers. But I don't need 200 tackles and nothing else. I want a bunch of turnovers and stuff. It's not Zaire Franklin's shot. Zaire Franklin had a ton of turnovers too, but like aside from Zaire Franklin, the Colts need somebody else who can create turnovers in big plays. And really, I mean, even at outside corner last year, it was what Womack had 2 picks and Jones had 2 picks, and that was it.
In one
Like,
game.
yeah, in one game.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly what we said would happen. He had the 2 picks against Caleb Williams. I said, he's never had a pick before.
yeah,
Probably won't again. No more
right.
picks after that.
Right. So like just give me playmakers on this defense.